Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday to you on this August 28th, 2025. Got all of your stories for your rush hour ride to work. If you are not a fan of Taylor Swift, then this is a tough week for you because she is dominating the airwaves. We now hear from Jason and Travis Kelce, their first podcast after the record-setting day that they had with Taylor. Of course, 1.3 million streams on YouTube, the most streamed podcast of all time. Also, it was the most watched Instagram video ever. So we'll get into their thoughts on that, plus more on the proposal, wedding, engagement ring talk, as I guess jewelers are saying the engagement ring might have been close to $500,000. Hey, I mean, what are you going to do? You know, you can't skimp out on the pop star. Do you love her or not, right? So we'll get into that, and then more conversations on Justin Baldoni versus Blake Lively, as Perez Hilton is now saying, you know, what he's going to be up to as he takes her on in court. And then we'll get into an update on Emmanuel, the baby, who has been missing for a week, has been dominating the news stories there. So a lot to get into. How about this? Let's discuss the video, I should say the story that we covered yesterday, which is the Nip Tuck actor Dylan Walsh. He crashed his car. Well, now he's saying it was a stroke that led to the car crash, according to his rep. We'll have to see if the sort of medical information backs that up. Again, he was alleged to have had open containers of White Claw in his car. Does White Claw lead to strokes? Well, I tell you what, White Claw, if you're driving, would lead to you driving your car into a pole. So either way, we wish him well. Sad updates coming from this story of baby Emmanuel. Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco gives an update, and then I'm going to share what apparently is breaking news, that it looks like the father might be the one who did it.
Cops get a bad rap of being just heartless souls. I will tell you that most police officers are parents, either dads or moms. And there is nothing more traumatic for us to go through than an injury, a death, or harm to a child. Nothing. And there is absolutely nothing that we want more than to bring these investigations to a successful conclusion. And when we talk about why we're here in the first place, that we believe someone murdered baby Emmanuel, who should still be in prison, but we have this unbelievable love for criminals, believing that they're somehow victims, and now we're all traumatized by it. We were all in this room a couple of years ago when I had a deputy murdered because someone was out on the street that should have been life in prison, but a judge let them go. We have an absolute breakdown of the justice system, and we are not preventing other children from being harmed when someone like Jake is allowed to be out on the streets harming children.
So again, there's a lot to break down here, and I don't want to dive too much into the politics of it all, but apparently this guy Jake, who now they're saying murdered, and again, he'll have a fair trial, but they're saying he's actually confessed to murdering his son, that he was supposed to be behind bars, but a judge let him go. And I think it's a false statement to say that people think that cops are bad. No, it's that when there are bad cops generally, in a lot of cases, have protected the bad cops. So for all of the good cops that are out there, there should be, we should elevate them and just kick out the bad ones, the ones that abuse their power and, overextend the brutality when it comes, you understand, the excessive force. Obviously, no one's okay with that. Well, here's the update on baby Emmanuel. I mean, it's a tragic story. I'm sorry to start the day with this, but we have been covering this for the last week or so.
All right, more breaking news. This is on that baby Emmanuel story out in California from our News Nation senior national correspondent, Brian Enton, okay? So Brian is now reporting that the father of Emmanuel, the 7-month-old, the parents are accused of the murder, that the father has confessed to killing the child and putting his body in a trash can. Brian had reported that. Now, there's some pushback, from we understand it, to Brian's reporting from local DA, but Brian tells us now he stands by his reporting and his sources that the father of Emmanuel Harrow has confessed to the killing of the child and putting the body into a trash can in their home. Jake Harrow, there's baby Emmanuel now. So this is information just coming into Brian. We'll sort through it and give you some more background later.
So there it is, News Nation reporting. Again, the DA is not I guess they're not saying that's what's going on right now, but that's what the report is. So we'll have more information. But again, that all comes because, the mom did this bogus interview where she said the baby was kidnapped. No one believed it. They kept looking into the story, and it's just a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. CBS Mornings is continuing to talk about Cracker Barrel and how they've kind of done a complete 180 on their new brand rollout.
It's a classic example of a company saying, hey, we are not doing well. We probably did some market research. Let's go change that logo. And it's a lack of understanding of who your customer is. Because the logo isn't just a logo. It's emblematic of the brand and the experience, the country store that people love, that home, comfort food. And so they, I think, said, look, let's not go the same route that some of these high profile missteps that have gone, like Bud Light, like Target. Let's make the change quickly and say, hey, we hear you and we're good.
Don't you think they should get, or should they get credit for, or kudos for listening to the customers and changing it back? Because they hadn't even had time to take the old one down and put the new one up.
Absolutely. This is an example of let's test and learn. It didn't work. Let's not lean in, and let's also listen to our shareholders.
And by the way, everyone's talking about the logo, but the real issue that a lot of people had was the overhaul of the restaurants. I think they said they spent $700 million. They brightened things up. They painted the walls. I was making fun of it the other day, saying I don't need to look at a sickle while I'm eating an omelet. And then someone left me a DM saying, they actually don't serve omelets in Cracker Barrel. It's like, well, I couldn't tell. The food is so inedible. I didn't even know what I was eating. Now, come on, let's be honest. You cannot eat Cracker Barrel sausage or bacon and know what you're getting. It doesn't. Okay, I've said enough. All right, let's get into Taylor Swift. Steve Kornacki, he's the numbers guy over there at NBC, breaks down Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's engagement. It was a wild week.
Numbers-wise about this. So we know they've been dating before this announcement for about 2 years. It started on July 8th, 2023. Travis Kelce attended a concert in Kansas City where Taylor Swift was performing. That began the whole thing. They've actually been engaged for about 2 weeks now. Yesterday was the announcement. His father said it actually came on August 10th. Now, since they've been together, Taylor's attended 23 Chiefs games.
Wow.
23. They're 19-4 in those games. Although we would say Phillies fans want to know 1-1 in Super Bowls. Just get that out.
All right.
Full disclosure there. And some numbers here. Travis Kelce, his number is 87.
Right.
13 is Taylor Swift's lucky number, very significant to her life. And that adds up to 100%.
So there it is. If you're into numerology, Steve Kornacki breaks it down. Here is Jason Kelce discussing the epic rise of his podcast. I mean, look, the podcast has already been crushing it. Pretty much all thanks to Taylor Swift, right? Now, sure, they were having their own success. They're personable brothers, but the Taylor Swift effect is real.
First 72 hours of Taylor's debut on New Heights. This is going to be similar to her intro right here. There were 379 million views on Instagram, including a record-breaking IG reel. That's right. The most viewed IG reel of all time happened in this time frame, which is crazy.
That's insane.
There were 61.6 million views on Twitter, 34.5 million views on TikTok, 15 million views on YouTube. This is all within the first 72 hours.
I see you shining, girl.
1.3 million views that were live on YouTube, which broke the record for the most concurrent live views of a podcast, I believe, of all time.
So there it is. Obviously, it's crushing it. Now let's get into the engagement ring conversation. Why Taylor Swift's engagement ring may be worth $500,000. This story coming next.
Pull up a picture of Taylor Swift's diamond ring here. What do you think about the price here?
Cut is somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000. It looks like an elongated cushion cut, probably an old mine Golconda type 2A diamond. That's again just speculation. Set in yellow gold. Somewhere upwards of $500,000 would be my best guess.
For younger generations, particularly Gen Z, they've been gravitating more towards the lab-grown diamonds. The fact that Taylor Swift is not going with lab-grown here, she's going with a mined diamond. Do you think that will have any effect on demand from some of those younger generations?
Not necessarily. So I would say a couple of things. One is the 50% tariff on natural helps lab considerably because lab is a much cheaper price point. So lab diamonds trade at anywhere from 90 to 95% less than the natural equivalent. So even with the 50% tariff, it's still easier to absorb on lab.
Let me tell you something. Ladies don't want a lab-grown diamond. They want to know that you tore into the mountain to find this thing. They want the story behind it. They don't want to think you just baked this up in a lab. No, but seriously, my wife, we found her diamond actually at a antique place that actually, I think the diamond came from the 1800s. It was part of an estate sale. It was refurbished, recut, and there's a nice story behind it. But not to brag. Also, not worth $600,000. So there it is, Taylor Swift's diamond. Be careful with that thing. Jeez, Louise. All right, so next story up here we have the Kelce brothers now getting invited to the zoos across the country. This, of course, because I think Travis Kelce says that he likes otters. Do I have that right?
We've also been invited to almost every zoo and aquarium in America. That's right.
They must not have heard what I said. I don't want to go to the zoo, although I will. Not that I won't. I don't want to go to the zoo and meet the otters.
You don't want to meet the captivity otters. You want to meet the wild.
I want to meet one in the wild.
Nice.
Come swimming over to me, or needs help somehow and screams or screeches for me to help it.
Well, you're not alone. Apparently, otter internet is a major thing, and they were in uproar. The official mascot of New Heights might just be an otter.
And that's what's crazy, right? When you're dating Taylor Swift, anything you say becomes the biggest news story. He's like, I like otters. Next thing you know, there's otter furries coming after them. So good on them. And finally, let's cover JD Vance again. He had his beef with Taylor Swift and called her, or she was a cat lady, of course. This idea that if you're a childless woman, he had this bogus idea that you don't live a meaningful life, which again is bogus. But now he offers his congratulations.
I think by and large, people want politicians to focus on politics, and they want celebrities to focus on whatever it is that made them famous, whether it's singing or dancing or acting. But, I'm a romantic. When I see two people who are in love getting married, I just wish them the best, and I congratulate them, and I hope they have a very long and healthy and happy life together. I will say, as a football fan, as a Cincinnati Bengals fan, I hope that the NFL does not put a thumb on the scale for the Kansas City Chiefs just because Travis Kelce is now getting married to maybe the most famous woman in the world.
Why does everything have to be a conspiracy? You know what I mean? I'm a Patriots fan, but I respect the game of the Kansas City Chiefs. There's no thumb on the scale for them. They've just been a winning football team for a long time. They got Patrick Mahomes. All right, well, Baby Gingras in the Justice for Clayton storyline again. The former attorney of Laura Owens was supposed to go to a DUI pretrial yesterday. Well, he requested a continuance, and I don't know. We'll have to see how that goes. Maybe he's going to argue that he wasn't drunk. He was having a stroke. Maybe that's what's going to happen. We'll have to see how that goes. All right, so interesting Blake Lively, Baldoni, Taylor Swift story. Here is Ronan Farrow debunking Taylor Swift conspiracies that he schemed against Justin Baldoni because fans will go out and attack. So he kind of does a good job of explaining it here. He, of course, is an investigative journalist, was seen dining with Taylor Swift because they're friends, I guess. And people thought, well, this must mean he's anti-Justin Baldoni because, again, Ronan Farrow was part of the Me Too sort of expose. Have a listen.
She uploaded this crazy conspiracy theory, completely divorced from facts. Mm-hmm. She started by getting up and saying, Ronan Farrow is the most powerful journalist at the New York Times. I don't write for the New York Times. Right. I have no connection to the paper. But her premise was basically that I had been photographed with my boyfriend coming out of drinks with Taylor Swift. Mm-hmm. And that Taylor Swift was friends with Blake Lively, the actress. Yes. And that Blake Lively was engaged in this lawsuit with this guy, Justin Baldoni. Mm-hmm. And then the New York Times, after I had drinks with Taylor Swift, did a story, which I had no knowledge of, no contact with, didn't encourage in any way, obviously. I'm not going to talk to a competing paper about a story like that. Nothing to do with this story. And her premise was, because of that chain of disparate facts that I had orchestrated with Taylor Swift the destruction of this guy.
Yeah.
I have never done any reporting on this guy. I
Yeah.
have nothing to do with this. And for a while, as I was getting essentially doxxed by this woman, she sent out her followers every
God.
possible channel of public.
Now, I'll just push back on this. Getting essentially doxxed. That's, when people say, what does it mean by getting essentially doxxed? Either you were doxxed or you weren't.
The communication was, you're just dirt. You're worthless. You destroyed this man. Again, complete fiction, nothing, not even adjacent to reality.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, well, this is so far from reality. Why engage with it? And then I realized, no, we are living in a time when people will go out and attack someone. And like gleefully be like, this influencer is taking you down, without even Googling what paper I write for.
Right.
And so I did finally respond to a couple of people. And what was interesting is when I explained, hey, this is truly a fiction, try to do your research in a respectful way. Of course, there's a subset of true extremists in any conversation like this, where they say, well, I don't care. I don't care about the facts that you're giving me. I am dug in.
Yeah.
But mostly people were like, oh, geez, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I hadn't bothered to think critically. I didn't bother to do research.
Which, by the way, is it's just a great reminder for everyone out there that we're all humans in this. And people that have, followed the Blake Lively and Baldoni case, they get emotionally involved. And, you see a photo of Ronan Farrow hanging out with Taylor Swift, and then you think, dang, are they colluding to take down Baldoni? Because, and again, this was months ago, but this idea that, well, Taylor Swift's friends with Blake Lively, Ronan Farrow exposed, other people in the past. Maybe they're using him as a way to, smear Baldoni because, he has written in the past for New York Times, and the New York Times is the smear that was initiated on Justin. And again, obviously, it seems obvious that none of this is true. He's obviously not been a part of the case. And now we know, in hindsight, that Taylor Swift has disassociated from Blake Lively. So it's interesting, and, good on him for just having grace for people. That's really what it comes down to. It's they mean well. They're trying to protect Baldoni. They think he was wrongfully smeared, but at the same time, it's well-meaning people have, been lemmings that have been run off a cliff in the past. Here's one of my favorite shows, Breaking Points. I love what they do. They usually have a left-leaning and right-leaning host, discussing the topics of the day. But in this video right here, they actually discuss Baldoni. Have a listen.
The celebration, the nationwide celebration over the Taylor Swift-Travis Kelce engagement.
Well, and the first question that people had for you was, will Blake Lively be invited to the Taylor Swift Travis Kelce wedding?
We all know the answer to that, and it's absolutely not. Barring some unforeseen reconciliation, Blake Lively will not be at that wedding. Now, the Blake Lively story, if you haven't been following the Taylor Swift-Blake Lively feud, it's actually a very interesting story of how tabloid reporters are used to manipulate narratives and how those can have sweeping legal...
You can't trust tabloid reporters now?
You can't trust the
Who
tabloids.
can you trust?
You can't trust Blake Lively either.
Can't trust.
And that's hard.
Can't trust Blake Lively.
That's hard for people to.
There it is. You can't trust Blake Lively. And I got to be honest with you. I've said this before. Ryan Grimm is one of my most trusted people I look to see what they think about what's going on in this world. If you haven't already and aren't consuming maybe a neutral news source, I gotta recommend Breaking Points. They do a really good job of kind of calling out things and not being afraid to take a look at both sides. And anyhow, I think they're extremely fair. All right, here is Perez Hilton. Again, lots to digest here. Here's Perez Hilton, spoke with Page 6 about entering his Elle Woods era. The media personality revealed he's cautiously optimistic as he heads into his subpoena hearing in Blake Lively's lawsuit against Baldoni, representing himself. Have a listen.
It was important to explicitly tell the judge here in Nevada because Ms. Blake Lively's lawyers did not want to meet and confer with me, which is usually where these kinds of negotiations are had. I told the judge, Your Honor, I am happy to volunteer a sworn declaration, a sworn affidavit to be deposed under oath or to testify at trial under oath while protecting my privileged sources and protecting my privileged work product and communications. I am happy to, under oath and affidavit, as I told you, testify. Nobody told me to write anything negative about her. Nobody paid me to write anything negative about her. Nobody gave me talking points, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it really feels like a case of a real life David versus Goliath. David being Justin Baldoni, and in this instance, me, and Goliath being Blake Lively and her A-list, very powerful, very famous, very rich husband, using their power and money to retaliate against Justin Baldoni and retaliate against me. And then there's also the topic of, sexual harassment, especially in the post-Me Too world.
So there it is. Perez Hilton will have updates as to what goes down with the judge. Says, look, I'll share whatever you need, depose me, whatever you need, but I'm not going to give up my sources. We'll have to see how that plays out. Now, I've got a story that is a tough one. It actually was breaking yesterday, and we were already in the process of putting together the afternoon rush, so I didn't cover it. I'm sure you heard of it, and that would be the story of the kids that were killed in the Catholic school shooting. 17 people injured. Suspect is dead in Minneapolis. I don't have much to add from this, but I will share two clips. The first being the mayor of Minneapolis, and then I'm going to share what was said about the issue of gun safety and, this ongoing problem we have in our country. Have a listen.
I have heard about a whole lot of hate that's being directed at our trans community. Anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity. We should not be operating out of a place of hate for anyone. We should be operating from a place of love for our kids. Kids died today. This needs to be about them.
It's heavy stuff. And you often hear the conversation, thoughts and prayers and things don't change. Well, this is actually interesting because this is shared on Fox News, that the common denominator with these issues is guns.
I think we do know the common denominator in all this are guns. Now, I'm not a big guy that said, I'm not a big mouth about guns this or guns that, but at some level, the sanctity and the misapplication of the Second Amendment can't supersede every conversation about the lives of our kids, the lives of our family members. My kids go to a church-affiliated school, and the first day of school is in a week. I can't imagine at chapel something like this happening. I wouldn't want this to happen to anyone. The common denominator in everyone is not a transgender. It's not a this or that. It's a gun.
Well, that's true. And, so many people have a hard time having this conversation because they're afraid that you're going to take away their guns. And every time there's a school shooting or any mass shooting, the sale of guns goes up because people just rush to get more guns. And the problem continues. And while the common denominator is guns, multiple things can happen. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can have a nationwide mandate that does better checks to make sure people with mental health issues don't get a hold of weapons. At the same time, we can have a better healthcare system that gets people the help that they need so that these problems can be addressed before they go to this sort of level of, chaos and evil. So a lot can be done. Despair and mental health issues are running rampant in our country. And I can't break it all down in the last few minutes of the podcast episode, but what I can say is these shootings, these mass casualties are not going to go away with thoughts and prayers. They happened in a religious school. So this idea that we'll just pray this problem away is putting our heads in the sand. And that's not where I don't think anyone wants to be. Action will come from getting leaders that are not paid by the gun lobbies and things like that to actually do a study about the mental health issues, a study about how effective the gun laws are and what can be done to make them more effective. I mean, what the fuck, right? What else are we doing here if we're not taking action? having the same conversation over and over, which would make us all absolute fools. All right. Well, we'll be back this afternoon to continue to talk about all of the news of the day. We'll see you then. I'm Dave, and this is The Rush.